the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Can you believe it? Lent is just 2 weeks away, and prepare for transformative Lenten season with bite-sized lessons on the sacraments. Father Rocky's Lenten lessons on the sacraments give you a daily glimpse into the 7 sacred mysteries of our faith. Get these new free lessons sent straight to your inbox every day of Lent and transform your 40 days with 40 insightful and powerful lessons. Sign up for Lenten lessons on the sacraments today at relevantradio.com/Lent. That's relevantradio.com/Lent. Okay, so over the weekend, a New York Times article was released. It was ultimately an investigation into Planned Parenthood, where the New York Times interviewed over 50 current and former Planned Parenthood executive consultants and medical staff members. They investigated the clinic's documents and legal filing, and what they found is telling. Planned Parenthood, and this is what they lead with in the article. They say the healthcare provider of last resort is working to shore up affiliate clinics that are in dire financial straits. Patients report failed abortions, misplaced IUDs, and inadequately trained staff. Just to mention a little bit of what's happened, reading from this article, there was a woman who was 8 weeks pregnant in New York who went to the Albany clinic there, business, and she obtained an abortion, but then bled for several weeks heavily after. She experienced painful cramps and then took another pregnancy test, which came back positive. This is after the abortion. When she called Planned Parenthood in Albany, New York, the staff assured her that they had seen the aborted baby and there was nothing that she had to worry about. She then later proceeded to go to the emergency room where they discovered what was happening. The baby was still in her womb. 12 weeks after the failed abortion, this woman, Miss Alston, went into labor and delivered a baby who quickly died after. She's now filed a malpractice suit against Planned Parenthood there in Albany, New York, and she's joined by many others who are doing the same exact thing, even going to pro-abortion lawyers who see, I think, a really important thing, money in this malpractice suit. That's why they would be taking on the abortion business of Planned Parenthood. Furthermore, employees at many abortion businesses across the country are sharing everything from running out of pain medication and IV flushes. The employee turnover rate at over 50% a year. That means they're losing half of their employees throughout the year. Inadequate training. There's a case in California last year where a birth control implant in a woman's arm was not properly placed and caused nerve damage. In Nebraska, there have been multiple complaints. One woman actually had an IUD inserted, and she went to the emergency room after and gave birth to a stillborn baby because they did not recognize that she was 4 months pregnant before implanting the IUD, which was the cause of death. And I could chronicle from across the country what the New York Times article has uncovered, with much yet to be covered. Joining me now to discuss this New York Times investigation is Dr. Ingrid Skop. She's an obstetrician and the vice president and director of the Charlotte Lozier Institute on Medical Affairs, is where she's the director. She also uses her experience of having delivered over 5,000 babies to dive into this issue of abortion. In particular, she's cared for women who have been through abortions and have had complications when no one else will care for them. Dr. Skop, I don't even know where to begin when looking at this story. I would love to hear your initial thoughts on what's happening in these Planned Parenthood businesses across the country that is startling news for entities that receive millions of dollars in taxpayer funding that apparently are only going to help with lobbying and fighting for legal abortion and not women's health care.
I'm with you, Timmerie. When I read this, my jaw dropped. I could not believe. I did believe what was said, because those of us who've been paying attention to Planned Parenthood's malfeasance for years recognized this was happening. But I was amazed that the New York Times, which is usually quite a staunch defender of Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics, was willing to publish this study. As you said, there were some egregious situations of children who died because of botched abortions and other malpractice by the Planned Parenthood providers, but also a sewage leak that made the patients vomit. The failure to even give positive sexually transmitted infection test results to women. You mentioned the turnover in the staff, understaffing. These staff, can you imagine what they go through being exposed to death all day long? And then their salaries are so low that many of them qualify for Medicaid, the article explained. Then it tells us that they received $700 million in taxpayer funding yearly under the Biden administration. In addition, they received $500 million in private donations and $90 million in COVID loans. So you'd think if healthcare was really a priority for them, they had plenty of money to provide decent healthcare for women. But as you mentioned, this was all spent on political advocacy, on legal fees, because Planned Parenthood has sued to block almost every pro-life law in our country. So they don't care that the women are injured. They're not out to provide quality care. They're out to provide abortions in as many situations as they can and to continue to keep that wide open, unrestricted. They do an excellent job of PR, but hopefully we're starting to see behind the curtain, and I'm hoping that people who, Planned Parenthood, even most pro-life people think that Planned Parenthood does more good than bad in surveys, but it's instructive to look at their annual report. In their most recent annual report, they said they did almost 400,000 abortions, almost 500,000 children that they killed. They only saw 2 million patients that year. So 1 out of 5 patients they performed an abortion on, which tells me that they did very few other services. Every year, 96 to 97% of their pregnancy services are abortion. And I've had women tell me they've walked into a Planned Parenthood to find out their options. They found it very, very hard to escape without getting an abortion, because it is assumed that because a woman walks into Planned Parenthood, she wants an abortion. We see from their annual report that they only do about 1% prenatal care. They really don't care for women who want to give birth to their child. Less than 1% is miscarriage management, despite the fact that about 15% of pregnancies miscarry, which leads me to wonder if they're selling abortions to women that they know are miscarrying and allowing that woman to carry an abortion on her conscience. And of course, less than 0.5% of the women are referred out for an adoption. Every year, their PAPs, their breast exams go down, and every year their abortions go up. Private doctors take Medicaid funding. So most women who have Medicaid can go to any doctor they want for their health care. They're not obligated to go to these dirty, poorly staffed, idealistic centers like Planned Parenthood. I'm hopeful that many people will see this article and begin to question the assumption that Planned Parenthood somehow cares about women.
It's startling to see that this is being shared somewhere such as the New York Times. Like you said, the pro-life movement has known this. You and I have seen you working as an obstetrician. I've seen it working in the crisis pregnancy centers. These women come and share their stories of having been to Planned Parenthood and how bad it is, but it only seems to be getting worse. They have more money than ever, especially after Roe versus Wade being overturned. And so the light truly needs to be shined on Planned Parenthood for what's happening. One of my questions, especially I know you being in the medical field, how can we, the common people who maybe know something about their local abortion business, how can we help change and improve the circumstances that women are facing today over so-called healthcare?
Well, fortunately, there are about 3,000 pregnancy centers in our country. So these are centers that are usually all the services they provide are free. They do pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, talk with women about options. They don't, of course, provide abortion, but they give women that alternative. As I mentioned earlier, the majority of women would have preferred to give birth if they'd only had more support. So these organizations will give relationship counseling, they'll give material support, help women get insurance coverage, whatever's needed. And they do such a beautiful job. Many times these are financed and staffed by women who have suffered from abortion. Mm-hmm. So they know they are doing this on a volunteer basis so that they can help someone who is in a situation that they were once in to provide another option. They're in every community. So I would say this is the way really that we counteract the Planned Parenthood abortion advocacy, is by showing women what real choice looks like and by helping them to make the choice that so many of them want to make, and that's to continue their pregnancy and give birth to their child.
I think another spin on this article that I was thinking of earlier when I saw that Planned Parenthood has over 50% turnover rate. I think with them seeing working inside these abortion businesses, how dire the circumstances are, few people actually want to perform abortion or be involved in that. And when they see how terrible the so-called medical care is for women, they don't want to be a part of it. And I think that's good news all the way around. And we need to fight to continue to help women from these maternal mortality rates that are only declining as pro-life laws are passed and abortion businesses close. Like what you just heard? Share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.